If Congress's inability to pass gun reform legislation in the wake of the Newtown shooting is any indication, gun rights groups like the National Rifle Association have little to fear from the political power of Washington. But former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg is betting he can strike some fear into their hearts with the power of his wallet. This week, he announced he is putting some of his billions behind the formation of Every Town for Gun Safety, a new gun control group whose goal is to sign up 1 million new supporters by Election Day. During the Tuesday announcement, Bloomberg said of his plans that, quote, "We've got to make them afraid of us." By them, he meant politicians in the 15 state houses that the organization is targeting. By us, he meant a coalition that will enlist the help of women and mothers in a door-to-door grassroots outreach effort. That effort includes the guest who is joining me now from Austin, Texas, Shannon, who is founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
So, you know, routine deadly gun violence is really classified quite differently in our national and collective fear scale than the kind of terrorist activities that we've talked about. Should we be changing what it is we're afraid of?
Well, the reality in America is that 86 people are shot and killed every day, whether that's a murder or a suicide. And so this is a very deadly and real epidemic in our country, and we have to do something about it. You know, just about every American agrees that we have to do something about it, but they aren't voting on it. And that's why, as part of the investment that Mayor Bloomberg is making, we are going to get at least 1 million voters mobilized to vote on this issue in the midterms. And that's just between now and November. So this is about building a foundation and moving forward to address this epidemic that we have collectively.
So your organization is very much sort of on the model here of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I'm wondering, you know, you talk about voting as one part of it, but is it also trying to shift sort of our understanding about guns, about gun ownership? How are you thinking about this?
Absolutely. You know, there are 3 ways to go after this. First, at the federal level. And unfortunately, this Congress has chosen to do nothing in the wake of Sandy Hook, which is shameful. But the other way is to go to state legislatures, and we've had huge successes in state legislatures, pushing back on bad legislation and passing good legislation. And then there's also American businesses. Moms make 80% of the spending decisions for their families in this country. And when we wield our economic power, we will make huge change. And we've already done that with Starbucks, Facebook, and Instagram. And so that is very much like Mothers Against Driving. They work to change the culture in this country as well as the laws.
Okay, hold for me a second, because Daphne, I want to ask about this notion of mothers and the power of mothers to shift this discourse, because, you know, this whole week there's been a lot of discourse about Hillary Clinton and whether or not, now that she's a grandmother, will she run? Madness. But I was reminded that this woman, who is a mother, absolutely performed a pro-gun language at one point when it became politically palatable in 2008. So I want to listen to that for 1 second and have you respond.
You know, my dad took me up behind the cottage that my grandfather built on a little lake called Lake Winola outside of Scranton and taught me how to shoot when I was a little girl. You know, some people have continued to teach their children and their grandchildren. It's part of a culture. It's part of a way of life.
Daphne? No, I mean, because I think it matters to me that in the moment that the man who is currently our president said, cling to guns and gods, that the response of the Democratic opponent in that moment was to say, oh, yeah, I'm with the guns, because it does feel to me like that is the big thing, even beyond the NRA, that this group is having to fight, is that when the chips were down, this Democrat was like, oh, yeah, me and the guns, yeah.
Right, okay, so Bloomberg, when he was mayor of New York, had enormous success using his personal wealth. And wealth for him, he sees that he can implement change. You know, when it comes to guns, it's not about money. It's about ruthlessness. And how ruthless are they going to be in saying this is going to be a one-issue thing for us? We are going to go after somebody who is not going to vote with us on this issue. And that is the test. That will determine how successful they will be in these races, because the other side is that ruthless. Yep. And that is where the success comes. It's not just money.
That language of ruthlessness, Shannon, has also maybe been talked about as a kind of enthusiasm gap between those who are strong supporters of the Second Amendment versus those who are trying to get common sense gun control laws. How do you close that enthusiasm gap?
Well, if you were on the ground here with our moms, you would see there is absolutely no gap whatsoever. The slaughter of 26 Americans in the sanctity of an elementary school completely changed the landscape. And, you know, the gun lobby has done a good job for 30 years of making people terrified that they're going to have their guns taken away. We are terrified our children are going to be taken away, and we will no longer tolerate Congress or other elected officials letting the gun lobby make the rules. We are not anti-gun. We are not against the Second Amendment. We are about the responsibility that comes along with rights, and we will fight for that till our dying breath.
Shannon, the clarity of that sentence, some people are afraid of their guns being taken away. We're afraid of our children being taken away. Thank you so much, just if for nothing else, for that clarity, but also for your work. Shannon Watts in Austin, Texas, thank you. And also thank you to Richard Cohen. Dorian and Daphne are going to be back in our next hour. But up next, my letter of the week.